Hi, this is Pastor Tim Bagwell, and I'm so glad that you're watching. I've got such an incredible word to share with you today. I believe it's going to impact your mind, your spirit, your body, your finances, because there's something about the Word. The Word will make you free. I know that God cares about you, and He cares about your family. He wants to touch your loved ones that are lost. He wants to heal the family member that's sick. He wants to help you be the person that God has called you and ordained you to be. I know that what you're getting ready to hear is going to liberate you, encourage you, and give you strength to face the battles that you're about to face in the future. Well, remember this, we care about you, we're praying for you, for your family, and most of all, remember, you are who God says you are.
I do have a word. I've got a couple things I'm going to share with you. I've got a prophetic word that I believe is absolutely foundational for the next 11 or 12 months of your life, and I'm going to release it to you today. I believe it's extremely powerful. I'm going to give you an opportunity at the end of service to sow into that prophetic word for what you want to see God do in your life in just in a few moments. But what I want to talk to you about today in this early session is specifically about faith and your faith and where that faith is found in the process that God takes you on to develop your faith. Now tonight I have a message for you called Mountain Movers, and it's all about how to have miraculous supernatural faith. I just spoke this message at my service on Wednesday night this last week, and it was incredibly powerful. We had a number of people healed in service. We had a lot of people get filled with the power of the Holy Spirit and receive their gift of tongues and receive the gift of prophecy, and everyone got the hands laid on them, and it was a massive miracle service that we had this week in Texas, and so I want to bring that to you tonight. So open up your heart, do what you got to do. Look, the Broncos already won this week, right? So you're good. You got nothing to do tonight except get filled with the power of the Holy Spirit, right? Broncos are good, so we're good. Amen? Amen. Amen. Well, I'm excited to share this with you. I've got a couple different things that I want to do, and first of all, I want to make sure that you understand how much I love the Bagwell family. Pastors Tim and Gayla are incredible. They're spiritual parents in my life. They're people that have spoken into my life and have been so a part of the healing process. Some of you know the very first time that I came here to Word of Life was the month after my daughter died. And people didn't know, should we have Joel preach? Should we not have Joel preach? How's he doing? What's going on with him? Maybe he needs to rest. And Pastor Adam and Pastor Tim and Gayla were the first people that said, no, let's get him here and let's minister to him and let's see what God can do. And can I tell you that I have never been, and when you lose a child to brain cancer, it's devastating. And it's devastating to your faith. It's absolutely devastating to your faith. And I remember, and this is 15 years ago, almost 16 years ago, that I came and we had the winter camp up in the mountains, and I literally felt so empty. I'm like, God, I don't know what I believe. I don't know what to say. But the pastors believed in me and knew that God would speak. And I'm telling you, I've never seen God move more powerfully. When I was so empty, He made me full. I want to encourage you today. You may feel weak. You may feel alone. You may feel like you have nothing to offer. But when you are weak, then He is strong. His strength is perfected in your weakness. And one of the things that I learned going through the toughest challenges in my life was that it's not about me. It's about Him in me. Amen? And so I want to encourage you with all my heart today to believe. Now, a couple of weeks ago in September, there was a Jewish holiday, and the Jewish calendar ticked over to a brand new year. Our American or Western year doesn't start until January 1st, 2019. But in the Jewish calendar, it is already ticked over, and it is the year 5779. So we share a 9 at the end of the calendar year. So I don't know about you, but I think God is more apt to go on the calendar that He created. He's already on a different timetable than we are. And I want to open up your heart and your mind to recognize the time that is at hand, okay? So every single letter in the Hebrew alphabet is also a number. They were originally hieroglyphs, so they were letters and numbers, and they were word pictures, and they gave a powerful meaning. So I want to share a word for you in Hebrew in just a second. But before I do that, I want to explain what 5779 represents. 5 represents, the symbol of it is the symbol of a doorway that's open, and it represents God making a way. The next two, the 7s, which anytime you have two numbers side by side inside of the Jewish language, those two letters or those two numbers, they mass multiply each other. And the 7 is, obviously we understand the number of perfection, but the symbol of it literally looks like a sword. So it represents the authority of God from heaven to earth, mass multiplied. So God is opening a way for his authority to be mass multiplied from heaven to earth. And the final symbol, the 9, I'm going to show it to you in just a moment, is it's called the Tate. And it literally, the symbol of it looks like a woman standing sideways with a womb, and she's impregnated. And what the Lord is speaking to me and has shown me so clearly is that this is a year, the next 11 months now, this is a year of divine impregnation. Is that a word? Did I just make one up? Hey, listen, it's probably not, but we're just going to go with it, all right? I did go to school in Oklahoma, so you got to give me a little bit of grace, all right? By golly, we can play football. I'll tell you that much right now. Anyway, so what I want you to understand, though, is that this year, the next 11 months, God has something that has been put in place and has been waiting to arrive in this timetable, in this moment in time, and it's absolutely powerful, and I want to share it with you. Are you open for that? We have faith for that? Okay, let's check this out. I'm going to read you a verse from Isaiah 60, verse 21. It says in the New International Version, then all of your people will be righteous, and they will possess the land forever. And they are the shoot I have planted. Say planted. The work of my hands for the display of my splendor. The least of you will become 1,000, and the smallest a mighty army. I am the Lord. In its time, I will do this swiftly. Somebody say, it's time. It's coming swiftly. Okay? The very next passage is Isaiah 61. It's my life passage. Isaiah 61, verse 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the verse that Jesus, when he stepped out into his ministry and in Nazareth, he stood up, he opened the scroll, he read Isaiah 61. He said, the Spirit of the sovereign Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor, to open the eyes of the blind, to set the captives free, and to release all those that are oppressed. Remember that powerful, powerful passage that he declared? He was declaring that he was the Messiah. Isaiah 61 is the message of the Messiah, what he would do. And one of the things that it specifically says that he would do and what his people would be like is that they would be like great oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for his splendor. So I had seen that, and I had recognized that, and that is a word for my spirit, and I believe a word for the church, but I had never seen 3 verses earlier, the connectivity between what God was doing and the timing of it, and using the exact same word, planted or planting. It's the word in Hebrew, matah. The word in Hebrew is matah, and it literally means to plant or the act of planting. And I want to show you the symbols. Can we put those symbols? It's the 3 symbols in a row, just like this. This is the word matah in Hebrew, all right? Now, I'm going to walk you through this. Hebrew it reads from right to left, okay? So it's opposite of us. So the first letter on this side over here, which is your right-hand side, is the M in matah. It's called the mayim. And if you could imagine, this represents a wave of water, okay? So imagine that there's a wave and it's breaking over to the left, this direction. The original hieroglyph literally looked like waves, okay? And the mayim represents the water of God, the spring of the water of life. So remember, the word is planting, and inside of the word for planting, there is the essence of the river of life inside of that word. What God is doing, God is already the thing that he is planting in you and has planted in you since the beginning of time, the thing that he embedded in your spirit. When he embedded it inside of you, He put inside already the water of life, the spring of life that's going to nurture that seed. The next letter over is the tet. Will you go back, or actually tate, will you go back to the all three symbols real quick that are all together? See in the middle, the tate, just like that, how it literally looks like a belly with a baby, or like you got the little bean in the oven, right? The bun in the oven there. Okay, so it's the tate, and it represents the opportunity, supernatural or divine opportunity that God has implanted or impregnated inside of you. And the final letter right there, that's called the ayin. And it kind of looks like a face, like two eyes, and then a face underneath it. The ayin, the original hieroglyph, was an actual eye. It represents illumination. It represents light. It represents the light of God. It represents perception. If you remember Jesus when he said, if your eye is full of darkness, how great is that darkness? But if your eye is full of light, your whole body is full of light. And so what the Lord showed me in this passage that is connected again to this year, 5779, the tate is in the year. It's also in this word. It represents divine opportunity. And what the Lord showed me in this, the reason that planting is connected with these three. Show me those three again real quick. The reason they're connected like that is because the thing that God has put in the center of your spirit and the fabric of who you are, he has encompassed it on both sides with the nourishment and the nutrition of the spring, the water of life that he's going to release and is releasing in your life, and then the element of the illumination, the light. Nothing can grow without both the water and the nourishment from the soil of where it's planted and the light and the energy from the sun. Those two things combine, and at the right time, at the right season, this thing will be born in you. And I'm telling you, this is the time and this is the season, and he's doing it swiftly. He's doing it swiftly. Amen? You open to this? Come on, let's rally our faith around this. And I want to talk to you about how we can find the faith that we need to find to walk in all that God has for us. This idea of faith, and I'm going to the second segment of notes now, gentlemen, has been something that's really, I don't know, to me, I mean, I grew up, Pastor Bagwell mentioned about my spiritual heritage. I come out of the spiritual line of Oral Roberts. My dad was actually, my grandfathers, both of my grandfathers were on staff for Oral Roberts. My dad's dad, B.B. Scrivner, was his accountant, managed all of his books, all of that type of thing, lived in a little town called Shawnee, Oklahoma. My dad had polio as a boy. Back, I guess that would be in the 40s or 50s or whatever. My dad is 80 years old, and he's just frisky as all get out, right? When you see my dad, you'll know exactly what I look like at 80 years old. We're like twins, and we act pretty much the same, except I'm way rowdier than my dad is, right? But my dad had polio, and Oral, you guys know who Oral and Evelyn Roberts are, right? Oral Roberts is kind of a big deal. Anyway, his first pastorate was in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and he was almost basically best friends with my grandfather and grandmother, the Scrivners. And Oral and Evelyn would come over every Monday, and they would eat. When I met Oral Roberts and Evelyn, they said, your grandma made the best baked beans we've ever had in our life. I mean, they remembered, they knew exactly who my dad was. And one of the reasons is that when my dad had polio, one day Oral came over and he laid hands on my dad, and my dad was radically healed of polio and has absolutely no side effects or anything to this day. Beautiful. My other father on my mom's side was Oral Roberts' ghostwriter. He wrote Oral Roberts' books all through the 40s and 50s and even into the 60s. And his commentary, Life in the Word, as far as the story inside of our family goes, my grandfather, G.H. Montgomery, wrote Life in the Word, the entire Bible commentary. It was my grandfather's life work. He took it, put it on Oral's desk, and it said Life in the Word by G.H. Montgomery, and Oral didn't even open it. He took a pen, he scratched through my grandfather's name and wrote Oral Roberts. He said, it's perfect, print it. So you're welcome, Oral. He owned the company, it's all good. My grandfather was the ghostwriter, so Oral got to put his name on it. But that's part of the lineage that I come from. But even coming from that, I mean, I grew up in a family that if I had a sick animal, we laid hands on it and prayed for it. I saw my animals get healed. I grew up seeing miracles happen. But this faith thing, it's so mysterious, right? It's so ethereal, and we don't know exactly how it works or how to grab it or touch it. But the scripture says that without faith, it's impossible to please God. So it's the most essential thing that we have inside of our life. And what's beautiful is that faith is actually a gift that God gave you. See, it says that we're saved by grace, through faith, not of our own, but it's a gift of God so that no man can boast. God actually gave you a portion of his faith so you could believe. This is how good God is, that he didn't just ask you to believe, but he actually gave you some of his faith so that you could. But see, what threw me for a loop is that I got caught up growing up in Charismania in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Everything crazy that could have happened. Remember the 80s? It's crazy stuff happened in churches, back in the day, right? People barking like dogs and laughing and falling on the floor and rolling around. And I grew up in all that. So I was pretty skeptical. And I learned a lot of these things where I felt like that all of my actions and all of my behaviors and everything that I did was somehow, some way, I could twist God's arm behind his back, and my behavior and my holiness and my abstinence and my and all of my sacrifices and my tithing and my giving and all those things that I did was a way that I could make God do what I wanted. And when my daughter died, it destroyed that, because I had fasted. I hadn't eaten in 11 days. We've been fighting for 8 months, this brain cancer, and we did everything spiritual you could possibly imagine, and I was absolutely sure that my righteousness and my connectivity to him and how much favor I had in him because of all of my acts and all of my works was what was going to give me the favor for my daughter to live and not die. And when she died, it was devastating. And God took me on a journey. And I literally had nothing left except this. God, I know that you are. I know you're real. I've had way too many encounters with you. And number two, I know somehow you're still good. Doesn't make any sense. But somehow you're still good. That's all I had. I didn't know if I believed the Bible anymore, guys. That's dangerous to be a pastor who doesn't know if he believes the Bible anymore. But what God did is reduce me down to the same faith that Abraham had, because Abraham didn't have a Bible. The same faith that Moses had, because Moses didn't have a Bible. Our forefathers had an experience with God, and they believed him to be good. They knew that he was, and they believed him to be good, and they diligently sought after him. And in Hebrews chapter 11, it actually says that this is the type of faith that pleases him. To believe that he is, and to believe that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. What I didn't know is that in my loss, God would actually reduce me down to the type of faith he was looking for all along. Let me read you a quick story, or beginnings of a story of Abraham. Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. I'm still getting used to how dry it is out here. I got in yesterday. I made the mistake of eating a whole lot of Japanese food with all the sodium, and I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I could hardly breathe. I was so dried out. We've had 21 days of rain in Dallas, and finally we got some sunshine, and I guess I brought some sunshine with me. Thank God. Thank you, Jesus. This is what he said. Genesis 12:1, get out of your country, from your family and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you, and I will make you. Someone say that. I will make you. I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great. And you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And so Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken to him. One more verse. This is found in Matthew chapter 4. Verse 18, watch this. And Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brothers, Simon called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, follow me, and what the next 4 words? I will make you fishers of men. And they immediately left their nets and they followed him. The first point I want to make to you today is that faith is found in following. Faith is found in following. Faith is not found in knowing where you're going. Faith is not found in knowing everything, how it's going to work out. Faith is not in seeing. Faith is in believing when we don't see. And Jesus is inviting us. I love that the father of faith, Abraham, who it says that because he believed God and followed him, it was accredited to him or accounted him to be righteous. The same invitation, come and follow me. Come, I'm going to show you a land that you can't even see yet, but I'm going to make you great if you'll just follow me, if you'll step out into this opportunity. See, so many times we want to know all the little details before we step, and God ordains the steps of a righteous person. That when I looked at that Greek, how that broke down the steps of the righteous man or order of the Lord, when I looked at the breakdown of that verse, it literally, the way that the ancient words were formatted, it literally gives the understanding that as you step out onto nothing, God forms something under your foot. See, some of us, we're waiting until we're waiting for all green lights. Ladies and gentlemen, you will never have all green lights. You got to step out. Faith is in the following. Faith is found in the following. I love that both the New Testament invitation and the Old Testament invitation to come to faith is the same. Follow me. Come into this unknown place, and I will make you something great. See, the disciples, these men had been sent to be about their father's business because they didn't measure up to go into the rabbinical school. So they were told, go be about your father's business. They were rejected by the religious establishment. Jesus sees them and gives them an opportunity that they were told they could not have. Come and follow me, and I'm going to teach you how to make sense of your life. You've been fishing. You have a skill set. You've been doing this. You understand things. I'm going to translate the journey of your life into something that I can show you how to make eternal. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. See, so many times we feel like the journey of our life disqualifies us from doing something for God. Our failures, our past, our occupation, our education, we may feel like it doesn't quite measure up. Guys, I was a professional martial artist. I owned a martial arts studio. I had thousands of students that I trained over the years. Literally at any given moment, I had 400 students training in my school. And I felt, come on, when you beat people up for a living, guys, that doesn't seem like it translates into God's work. I mean, that's what I did for a living. You know, I beat people up, and I taught other people how to beat people up, and it was beautiful. It was for the Lord. But it didn't translate. But what the Lord showed me is that since I was 14 years old, I had been teaching people, I had been challenging people, I had been living as a strong believer, I had been trying to lead people down a right path, I had been coaching, I had been counseling, I had been writing curriculums. Everything I needed to do as a pastor, I had been doing as a martial artist. I just had to learn new curriculum. He used my journey as a martial artist to train me to be a pastor. I didn't know he was doing it, but the journey that you're on, where you are right now, he already has you in the process, and he is making you. Say, I will make you. I will make you. God is going to make you something incredible. He's going to make you into something absolutely incredible. The second point I have for you is that faith is found in the making, in the process. When we look at the story of Abraham, he was 75 years old, his wife 65 years old when God called him, gave him a promise of making him a mighty nation. He goes for 13 years and he has nothing but ups and downs and problems. No children are born. He's gaining wealth, but people keep trying to steal his wife. He goes to Egypt, they want to steal his wife. He comes back to Syria, somebody wants to steal his wife. Listen, when I get to heaven, his wife was 90. People still trying to steal her. I want to see Sarah. Come on, if you're 90... Pastor Mike, if you're 90 and kings are still trying to steal you, you are a fine woman, right? 90, trying to steal her. He went through all these ups and downs. See, we can read through the story of Abraham from about Genesis 12 to Genesis 25 or so, and we can read through that in 15 to 20 minutes. But what we don't realize is that story was actually 5 or 6 or 7 decades. It was decades long. And we skim through it, and we don't realize that it was 13 years, and then there was an idea that Sarah came up with. Hey, how about Hagar? How about my servant? She ain't as fine as me, so I'm not that nervous. But maybe you could make a baby with her. And Abraham's like, all right, your idea, might as well, what the heck? Well, we know how that worked out. Then Sarah's like, what have you done to me? And Abraham's like, chick, this was your idea. What are you talking about? Anybody ever had that? Their idea, but now it's your fault. Never mind. There's a marriage ministry here that is... It's really good. It was 25 years before Isaac would be born. 25 years of following the promise. Abraham was in a season of being made by God. I will make you into a great nation. He was being made, and it looked like nothing was happening. But God was making him all along. I want to give you a little funny rhyme that I'll explain in just a second, that making is like baking. Do we have anybody here that likes to bake? Anybody? Do you bake from scratch? Anybody bake from scratch? Okay. My wife loves to bake, and she loves to bake from scratch, and I like to cook, but I don't bake. Baking is too hard. If you're baking from scratch, it's too hard. If you're cooking, you can mess something up and just add some salsa, right? We can fix something, a little cheese, a little salsa, we can fix this, right? But when you're baking from scratch, every percentage, every ratio, every amount has to be exact, every single ingredient. You can't skip an ingredient. You have to get all of them in the mix. Every single part. The temperature has to be precise. The amount of time, everything, it comes down to precision. And the only person that knows is the person who's doing it or has the mastery of doing it. And it's a process. Making is like baking. Now, my wife wanted to impress some friends, and she cooked a dinner, and she made these biscuits. And they were delicious. But at the end, she told us that something had gone wrong. We didn't know because she was the baker. But she said, and they were really good, and we had eaten 2 or 3 of them each. I mean, they were fantastic. But they didn't look like a biscuit. They looked like a fat pancake. Maybe kind of in between a half of a hamburger bun and a fat pan, kind of hockey puckish. And but they were delicious, and she was so upset because something went wrong, and she didn't know what part it was because it was complicated. So, but can you show the picture of what my wife baked? There's a picture. Look at this now. My wife last week took a class and learned how to make sourdough bread from scratch. Can I tell you, dear Jesus in heaven, this was unbelievable, but every single part, it was all of this stuff that came together had to be perfect. And if you mess any step up, it's messed up. Let me help you with something. You are the lump of dough. He is the baker. You don't know what goes into your process. He does. You don't know how long it takes. He does. You don't know what ingredient is necessary. He does. You don't know what thing that you could be in the middle of trying to rebuke. And he's like, you need to embrace, because this is part of the making of who you are. Amen? When my daughter got sick, we had people, and man, when you're in the faith movement and have been in the Pentecostal and charismatic movement, people will come up and say crazy stuff that the Lord has told them to say. And walk around her crib for 7 days, 7 times, and at the last day, scream real loud. That's wonderful, scream real loud at your baby. That's ridiculous. People, but I'm telling you, we were so desperate, we would do it. We would do anything someone said. And our founding pastor, Pastor Mike Hayes, he said this. The only thing he said, the prophetic word that he had was, this will be the making of Joel and Jennifer. It didn't go the way we wanted. It didn't happen the way that we wanted. We wanted our little baby O'Neill to live. But I can tell you, my wife and I would not be who we are today without that making process. And when you go through hell in life, you have a choice. The enemy is intending for it to break you, but the Lord is intending for it to make you. And you get to choose. You get to choose. Am I going to let the devil break me down and destroy me? Or am I going to allow the Holy Spirit to make me into something that I don't understand and I can't comprehend? But he knows what he's implanted inside of me. See, at the invitation, for both Abraham and for the disciples, at the invitation, there was the embedding of potential, the embedding of a dream. Come and follow me. Step out onto nothing, and I will make you. There was a dream seed at the invitation. When God created you, he put a dream seed inside of you. There's something inside of the womb of your spirit. And as I declared earlier, the process is underway. The time has come, and it's happening swiftly. That's what the Lord is saying. It's happening swiftly. And we must position ourselves. We must position ourselves to do whatever necessary that God is asking us to do. I've got one more quick passage for you. This is found in Genesis chapter 22. There was a morning or an evening that the Lord showed up to Abraham. Abraham was about, oh my gosh, I guess he would be close to maybe 135 years old. Scholars believe that Isaac at the time was close to 35 years of age. So we're talking about from beginning to end about 60 years up to this point. From the promise initially, go into the land I will show you. Come follow me into nowhere. Come follow me into a mystery, onto an adventure. See, listen, can I tell you that if you're doing this Christianity thing right, if you're living your Christian faith-based life right, it will never be boring. It will be an adventure. If you're bored as a Christian, you're doing it incorrectly. Because God will always stitch you stepping out onto nothing. God is doing things in me right now and provoking me to step out into the things right now that are terrifying, where he's got me in way over my head, right? But he's with me. And when he's with you, it doesn't matter how deep it is. He's got you. He's going to get you through it. So Abraham, he gets a visitation. The Lord comes to him, an angel of the Lord comes to him and says, hey, tomorrow I want you to take your son Isaac, your only son, the one that you love, and I want you to go into a place that I will show you, to a mountaintop that I will show you, another invitation into the unknown. And you're going to sacrifice him there as a burnt offering unto me. It was cultural at that time, in that era. There was a god called Moloch that pagans would sacrifice their children to for favor. And so it was a cultural norm that gods would ask this type of thing. And that's not the nature of our God, but God, I've heard it taught, was looking for a legal right to do the same thing with his son, Jesus Christ. That he couldn't do what no human was willing to do for him. He had to find someone that had that type of faith to release the seed of faith into the world. So Abraham gets up the next morning. He doesn't tell Sarah. Can you imagine if he had told Sarah, listen, Mama, I had a visitation from the Lord last. Can you imagine if Sarah had known? Can I tell you, sometimes the Holy Spirit will tell you things that are not for anybody else for you. But you. They're only for you because no one else can handle it. There's no way. Abraham stuck to a single confession the whole time. We are going to go worship and we will come back to you. It says in Romans that Abraham believed that the same God that was able to provide the promise was able to preserve and resurrect the promise. So Abraham, can you imagine? He literally takes the wood, places it on his son's back, and he's carrying the fire and the knife. Leaves the servant, says, you stay here, the boy and I will go worship, and we will come back to you. The fire and the knife. He's walking up this mountain with the instruments he's going to use to destroy his son's life. Can you imagine the mental strain upon him going that direction? And his son at the top of the mountain says, Father, I see we have the wood and the fire and the knife, but where is the lamb for the sacrifice? And Abraham declares, the Lord himself will provide a sacrifice. This is where we get the term Jehovah Jireh. Watch this. Abraham stretched out his hand. This is Genesis 22:10. He took the knife to slay his son, but the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, saying, Abraham, Abraham. So he said, here I am. And he said, do not lay your hand on the lad or do anything to him. Watch. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son. Now you know? Really? 60 years of following you, 60 years in the making, 60 years in the oven, 60 years being cooked, and now? Come on, that's a little over the top, right? Now you know? But watch. Look at the blessing that comes. I believe this is down probably verse 16 or so. The angel speaks again. A ram was in the thicket. Abraham found the ram, sacrificed the ram. He said, by myself I have sworn, says the Lord, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son, blessing I will bless you, and multiplying I will multiply your descendants as the stars of the heaven and as the sand which is in the seashore, and your descendants shall possess the gate of their enemies. In your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. My final point to you is simply this: faith is found at the altar. There's a sacrifice. There's an obedience that we have to be willing to walk through. See, if we're not careful, our promise can become an idol in our life. And we stop worshiping the Creator and we worship the created. Can I tell you, I've seen marriages completely disintegrate because they prayed and believed and prayed and believed, and they finally had that child, and they loved the child so much, the promise of God that came to their life, but they loved the child so much that they made the child the priority, elevated the child as an idol, and everything else in their world was second. And I've watched marriages disintegrate and fall apart because a covenant with the promise was put in a position higher than the covenant that protected the promise. The covenant of marriage comes before the covenant with your children, because the covenant of your marriage is what creates the stability and the infrastructure and the healing environment and the wholeness and the entire way that your child will see God, is how he sees you and your wife, you and your husband interact together. The picture of a husband and a wife is the picture of Jesus and his church. We can't allow anything in our lives, this seed of destiny that God has planted in you, that the moment is here, the season is now, it's happening swiftly. We can't allow there to be anything that we have elevated up that we're not willing to lay on the altar for God. Can I tell you that if it's a dream from God, he will resurrect it? If it's a dream from him and you put it on the altar, he will resurrect it. If it's not from him, he'll burn it up, and you'll be glad later that he did. God will open up doors for you. He will make magnificent things come into your world, but he has to be first. He's got to be first. Amen.